Hey y'all, welcome back. I am here with my friend and fellow prison TikToker and fellow felon, Jon Romano. Welcome to the show, Jon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming and visiting with me. We are in California right now, and right a block from Venice Beach.
It's beautiful.
Jon's been to the beach twice today.
Mhm.
So we're having a good time. We've come a long way from prison cells.
Yeah, and we're living the dream now. This is the thing that we fantasize about while you're locked up. This is it right here.
That's absolutely right. A lot of times I was dreaming about being in the water and being out in the fresh air. And now we're in this space where it's like this Texas girl and you're from New York. And
Upstate New York.
we've got all these palm trees around us, and it's really pretty fabulous, actually.
Yeah.
So, Jon, and I don't want to go too much into your crime, except I know that your crime directly relates to your mission, which you do a lot of advocacy for gun control.
Yeah.
So, would you like to just kind of briefly share, just kind of lightly touch on that?
Yeah. So, I always like to tell people first and foremost, like when I talk about mental health, I'm not blaming what I did on mental health. I am just saying that it was a factor in what happened. And that's kind of why my mission is not only talking about gun violence, how we can reduce it, but how we can address the mental health issue going on, not only nationwide, but around the world. It is not taken as serious as it should be. So I struggled a lot when I was young with depression, anxiety, and I even asked for help. I had a supportive family, but it was something beyond what they knew. To suddenly be dealing with somebody, I was suicidal at 14, 15 years old. And I started to get the help, but unfortunately, I never truly opened up as much as I wish I did. And um, yeah, everybody just thought I was getting better. And to a certain degree, I was, but I was still holding in a lot. And I wasn't addressing some of the deeper, darker issues going on within me. And when I was 16 years old, um, I ended up I walked into my high school with a shotgun, and my intentions that day weren't what we see sadly on the news of too often. I wasn't there to kill, but to be killed, and I wanted a like public suicide. And because in my mind there was multiple things going on. First, I didn't want to do it at home and have my family find my body. But also I wanted to make sure I wasn't forgotten, because part of me felt like I could stay home and end my own life, and that people wouldn't even notice. Even though there were so many people who cared about me, my depression really like convinced me at times that my life was worthless and nobody cared about me. So yeah, unfortunately that day, I caused a lot of pain, a lot of suffering to a lot of people. And I did want to do that. I knew I'd be psychologically harming people, but
As a child.
I was 16 years old. I just turned 16. So we're talking about like, I just started learning to drive. And I tell people, I wasn't even old enough to see a rated R movie by myself, let
Right.
alone buy tobacco or anything like that that we consider being an adult. But I did walk in that day, and I fired a few rounds into the ceiling above students' heads as warning shots to scare them away. And I walked around for a while and was eventually grabbed from behind because I was waiting for the police, expecting the police to show up
And shoot you.
and shoot me. Yeah, it's called suicide by cop. It's more common than we know, unfortunately. But so when I was grabbed from behind during the struggle, because then suddenly I'm trying to get this guy off of my back, I'm trying to get control of the gun again. My finger had been on the trigger, and when I'm trying to like shake him off me, the trigger hits and the gun goes off. And there was a teacher who was coming up behind us to help that I didn't know. And he ended up getting hit in the shin with some birdshot. And I didn't even know until later on that I chopped somebody, but that doesn't take away the fact that I did. And so I ended up giving up the gun, and I ended up spending 17 years in prison for it. Yeah, and I've done what I can to turn my life around. thankfully, I had the family supporting me, and I focused on my mental health more than ever. I opened up. I talked about being sexually abused as a child. I talked about those thoughts of like, just never feeling like I fit in anywhere. Even though I had friends, even though I wasn't a loner type, I was the type who was out with friends. The shooting happened Monday morning. I was out with friends Saturday night having a blast, but it was just one of those things where sometimes my depression could kick in and I would just immediately downward spiral from, being happy and everything seems to be going well to the next thing I know, I want to end things. But so my focus has been a lot on advocating for mental health, advocating for people to feel more comfortable to open up and to get the help that they need. And we should be making sure that mental health resources are available and affordable. Not to mention, I believe that the education system should be integrating some type of mental health, not treatment, but education, and making sure that I've had preschool teachers reach out to me and say, in preschool and even in kindergarten, they focus sometimes on emotions and helping the little kids understand what they're feeling and how to work with it. And I wish that we continue to do that, throughout the whole K through 12 education system, but we don't. So I talk a lot about mental health. I talk a lot about gun violence, and I do support the Second Amendment, but I do believe there needs to be some reforms to make sure one of the more common things that I bring to people's attention is, and I think it's 32 states in America, you can sell your firearm to another person without doing a background check on them. It's just a, private seller who doesn't have a federal firearms license, and they're just saying, yeah, so I got this and you can buy it from me, and you don't have to see if that person's an ex-convict.
In Texas, that's the case.
Yeah.
You can buy from a private seller and even go to a gun show, and some of the vendors will require background checks because they're not private sellers, but private sellers can set up at gun shows. So it's really surprising to me. I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit and touch on, you talked about what depression and anxiety and mental health looks like. You mentioned that you were out with your friends that weekend before. And I think that sometimes that we look at kids going out in public with their friends and hanging out and even probably laughing and having a good time like 15 and 16-year-old kids do. That doesn't mean that there's not something internal going on with them.
Yeah, we have this image of depression being somebody sitting alone in their room, just isolated, and this obvious depression, when in reality so many people are out laughing and joking, and sometimes that's even their coping mechanism, is to be the funny person, to make everybody laugh, to feel like they're wanted or fitting in, or just to distract themselves from their own depression. And depression has many different images, and we need to realize that there's so many people out there who are suffering, and you don't realize it. They don't have that stereotypical persona that we might think of.
So looking at yourself, looking at 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old Jon, what were were there warning signs, do you think, in your childhood that maybe we should be aware of to be looking at for the kids in our own community?
So I would say that I definitely had some of the warning signs that are pretty typical for a lot of things of depression. Obviously nothing. There was no extreme warning signs of what I ended up doing, but I did have my grades started slipping. I went from like an A and B student to C, D, and even failing in high school. I went from never getting in trouble to suddenly getting detention, in school suspension. I wasn't getting into fights. I got into one fight, and I felt I was doing the right thing. Somebody I knew was putting his hands on a girl, so I wanted to put my hands on him. But I wasn't showing like this outward lots of violence. And looking back, a lot of people even said like I was kind of the one who was getting into trouble quietly. When I got detention, when I got suspension, it was for, skipping class. It's just for not being there. I wasn't outwardly, causing a lot of disruption. And so nobody paid too much attention to me. Even when I asked for help at the school, even when I told them, like, I need some extra help because I wanted to get my grades back up. I wanted to get things in. And, I wasn't a priority because I wasn't causing that disruption. And that's something that I also advocate for, is make sure that we pay more attention to the kids who might be, suffering in silence, and they're not, on everybody's radar.
If a kid asks for help and says, hey, something's going on,
Mhm.
even though they're not the one causing all the disruptions and causing all the problems, we definitely have to step back and say, whoa, okay, let's see what's going
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, and one of the keys is to help people without alienating them. Because if you alienate somebody, and if you kind of separate them from everybody else, you can also make them then feel more isolated, and make them feel like, yeah, there is really something seriously wrong with me. And that can become a downward spiral in some cases. And that's why I advocate for the general infusion of mental health education, is that so we can help everybody understand these are the warning signs that you might be going from just being kind of in a regular funk that we all go through, where you might be heading into something more serious. And so somebody can identify it within themselves, or maybe you can identify it in your friend. You can know how to help yourself or a friend, and you can know when you need more help, when you need professional help. And again, making sure that that professional help is available and affordable, especially for kids.
And I think that's really the broader problem that we have. We kind of are letting our people that have mental health issues, we're letting it escalate until they commit a crime,
Mhm.
whatever the crime that might be. And then we're just kind of locking them away.
Yeah.
And then there's no help within the system. So with that said, you went into prison as a child, as a
Right.
troubled child.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine walking into prison as a 16-year-old with that charge.
Mhm.
How did that feel? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So in New York State, and this is mid 2000s, 16 years old, you're an adult. Not only as far as charges, but even when I was in county jail, they did have a juvenile section, but because the seriousness of my crime, they put me with adults. And, it was a year later when I was sentenced to 20 years, and I was 17, sent up north into maximum security prison with adults.
Did you catch bad things from the men, or did they kind of maybe baby you a little bit,
So
or
I will be honest, yeah, there was actually a lot of that, of like, I had the baby face at the time, and there were a lot of guys who like saw me as like the little brother or like the son. They wanted to take me under the wing. They wanted to show me the way. And I was lucky because not everybody gets that. And I think it was because I kind of stuck out so much. Young white kid from the suburbs. Unfortunately, our prison system is definitely leaning towards people of color who come from the inner cities. So I definitely stuck out, but it was weird. People definitely wanted to help me more than kind of come at me in a weird way.
how much time did you end up doing?
So I was sentenced to 20 years, and in New York, you have to do about 85%. And yeah, I stayed out of trouble for the most part, got into a little bit of trouble here and there. But I did all the programming, and I did just under 17 years. I was released.
So you're on parole now.
I am currently on parole now. Yeah.
How long have you been home?
I've been home for 2.5 years now.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that we were so close to
Yeah.
our out dates.
I was released December 15th, 2020.
January 2021. So really close.
Yeah.
So you're coming back into the community. Did you go home to the same neighborhood and community where
Right.
the crime happened?
So no, I my mom had moved to a town about 30 minutes away, and I lived with her for a while. But I did actually work. We had friends of the family who had their own business, and they told me, yeah, as soon as you come home, you got a job. And so I actually went and worked, and I was like right there in my hometown. But again, I was now an adult who looked very different. And a lot of people didn't recognize me, or maybe they did and they just didn't say anything. Some people did recognize me, and I had a lot of support, believe it or not, which was not what I was expecting.
Right. That's wonderful. And I,
Yeah.
I think that there was an acknowledgement there that you were a troubled kid. You weren't it going in with this malicious
Yeah.
intent. So
Well, I mean, even the people who believed I had a malicious intent, they, from those who spoke to me, believed, all right, I served 17 years. This was not a slap on the wrist. This was not somebody just getting away with it. You know, I did my time, and they could tell that I did my time right because I had, you know, I became a better person. And I can say I only did that. I only turned my life around because I had the support from my family. And it's sad that so many people in prison don't have that support. And if you don't have that positive support system, usually from the outside, you're going to find a negative support system sometimes from the inside.
I would say, in my experience, the majority of the people I was incarcerated with did not have a positive support system on the outside. Do you have any thoughts on what we can do as a community to offer support to people that are incarcerated that maybe don't have that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the prison system needs to allow more programs and volunteers of people coming from the outside. Because where I did my time in New York State, certain prisons allowed it, but a lot of prisons, they were very strict. They did not want people volunteering and coming in and helping out. Um, and I believe that's one of the best things, but also it might be hard for some people on the outside to help those inside, but when they do come home, that reentry process can be crucial also. And kind of allowing somebody to maybe show who they are today instead of automatically judging them for who they were before, that can be very important.
I think it's really easy for us as a society to see someone coming out of prison and immediately we want to, what'd you do? Oh, you were in prison. What'd you do? What happened? And the fact is that that happened so long ago. You guys can imagine, if you've never been incarcerated, think about the worst thing that you've ever done. Everybody has things that they're ashamed that they participated in or did. And if you had to tell that for the rest of your life.
Right. The key word that you just said is speaking on shame. It's actually one of the things that helped turn my life around was I read this book. It's called Houses of Healing. It's specifically written for people in prison, but it talked about shame because a lot of us, obviously, we do have that guilt, remorse, and shame. And it can either weigh you down, like it was for me for a long time, where I believed I would never, I would never be anybody that could help others. I would never be anybody who would have a good life. And I just felt like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. But then I read this where it's like, no, that's toxic shame. You can have a positive sense of shame that pushes you forward and helps you realize, like, okay, I did something in my past I'm not proud of. I hurt people. I have to use that as motivation to do better now, to help people. And that's why I just keep going. I keep pushing. I keep trying to do more to help.
I think that's key, right? We have to acknowledge that, yes, we made poor decisions, and then we have to look at how we can now heal our environment and our
Yeah.
families and our communities, to stop the damage and stop further damage and heal what we've done, right?
Yeah.
And you're certainly doing that. So when I came across you on TikTok, you were working at a homeless shelter
Yeah.
and you were showing all kinds of ways that we could help our people that didn't have homes, that community. You were actively taking donations, and we were watching you unbox all kinds of that. I think that's the first video I saw of yours. You were unboxing some donated items that you were going to take to your workplace, and it was like men's underwear and deodorant and
Yeah.
socks. And I thought, oh, this is a cool guy. And that was like an instant follow, right? And then I started learning about your past from that. And then there was an incident,
Right.
a horrible incident.
Yeah. Uh, so it's kind of hard to talk about, but I will.
And
No,
John,
no, no. But it's important to talk about it because it's a dark reality.
I
Uh,
want you to feel comfortable, and I don't want you to relive any trauma.
oh, I relive it all the
So,
time, but it's kind of hard not to.
right.
But yeah, so I won't go into too much detail, but long story short, I was working at the shelter and I loved it because I had that fulfillment of I'm helping people.
And you definitely were. When we were watching videos, you definitely were making such a positive impact.
Yeah. But so I've gone from somebody who had mental health issues who committed a horrible crime to being the victim of somebody committing a horrible crime. And yeah, so there's
And please take your time and please don't feel pressured because we don't even have to talk about it, John. I don't
No,
care.
I'll just, again, long story short, there was somebody who was being very aggressive and disruptive towards others. And so myself and a couple of coworkers, we have to step in. You have to de-escalate the situation. And it appeared that it was, but this individual just started to keep going, keep going, and we can only give somebody so many chances. Those who are homeless obviously have a very hard life. And we understand that when they come in, it's going to be hard. Sometimes, you know, they become verbally abusive and all like that. And we understand, but after a while, there's only so much you can take and you have to tell somebody, I'm sorry, but you have to leave.
So it's interesting, the population in our prison system, our prisons are full of people that are suffering with mental health issues, and our streets are full of people that don't have homes that are suffering from those same types of mental health issues.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened. Someone with a severe mental health issues, and he became uncontrollable, and you got attacked.
Yeah.
You got attacked, and you're still healing. Your body is still healing from that.
Yeah. So yeah, we didn't have any security. We didn't have metal detectors. We didn't search bags. And that had been brought up. But the administration basically, they wanted it that way. They wanted it to not feel so industrial. They
Right.
wanted people to just come in, sign their name, get some food, get a shower, relax. But this individual brought in, he had two swords. They're these small swords, they're called katanas. And yeah, so I told him, I'm sorry, you gotta leave. Come back tomorrow, and just whatever's going on with you today, just let it go and come back tomorrow. And he ended up saying, can I go get my property? Because we have like these gym lockers.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah, of course, it's your stuff, just grab your stuff, but you gotta go, I'm sorry. And he went and
I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And when it happened, your community on social media certainly showed much love and concern and prayers. Definitely the community that we're here in California with, we were definitely thinking about you and talking about you and praying for you, all of that stuff, right? And we kind of didn't know where to go to how to support you.
yeah, because we all knew of each other, but we weren't really communicating a whole lot. And people kind of get used to seeing videos, from me like popping up every day,
Mhm.
and then suddenly nobody heard from me. Um,
So
but
you're back on
yeah,
social media.
yeah, it took me a while, but I came back on social media and I started to use this as this is where my journey is right now. I always shared my journey. I talked about, working at a homeless shelter. I talked about what it's like to be in prison, coming home from prison. And I started to use this as a way to be like, you know what? This is my journey right now. I am recovering physically, mentally, spiritually, just everything. I had to reboot because I almost died.
And you're in California.
Oh yeah.
You went from the East Coast to the West Coast.
No, and that's what I tell people is I have a lot of struggles physically and everything, but I still have a good life. And I'm very blessed. The family support that I had in prison was obviously still there. And now they were able to be right there with me while I was in the hospital. I spent, 5 weeks in the hospital. I spent 2 months in a nursing home. My family was there. My girlfriend was there. You guys were reaching out, and that support kept me going. And I was grateful. And I always wanted to share that with everybody. And I always want to let people know that no matter how fucked up life might be, excuse my language,
Okay.
but no matter how messed up life might be, you can still have a good life. You can still push forward. Tomorrow will come and changes can happen. And I went from lying in a hospital, not being able to move anything except my head for like 2 weeks. My body was in such, horrible damage. to here I am, my hands are a little messed up, but I can walk around. And we were just walking on Venice Beach.
Yes.
She jumped in the water. I just kind of hung out with some others, watching, enjoying it. And it's beautiful. And I have a beautiful life. And that's what I tell people is no matter how dark things are, tomorrow can be beautiful.
I think that those are some excellent, like, final thoughts for certain. And I just wanted to say that continuing to share your journey through after the attack, after prison, after childhood trauma, that you felt like you were helping so many people working at that homeless shelter, but you are still doing that, Jon. It's still happening. You sharing your message and contributing to your community in a positive way, that's still happening. And we appreciate you and we are here for it, right? So Jon, tell them how we can find you on social media.
Yeah, so I'm on. So you can find me on social media, Jon Seeking Peace. I'm on TikTok, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. I have to start adding more onto my YouTube channel, but Jon Seeking Peace. You can find me there.
Jon.
That's right.
Jon Seeking Peace. And we will all see you there. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.